it's Nicole and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to do a species spotlight on the Brasilorchis Schunkeana orchid. I'm going to tell you a bit more about the culture for this orchid and how I care for it here in my apartment in New York City. If you guys like these kinds of videos, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more orchid content like this. So let's jump right in. So the Brasilorchis Schunkeana is a part of the Maxillaria family. You can sort of see from the bulbs on the bottom, it has a leaf or two leaves on top. What I like most about this orchid and what it's really known for is its black flowers. So you can see one over here. I've had a couple of blooms in the past and they're just absolutely pretty. They're pretty easy to grow. The flowers they look black, but they're actually sort of purple. I'm here by my window and you could sort of see it. It's, let me see if I could zoom in for you guys. It's a very dark flower. The inside is sort of shiny. It's really, really nice. Black flowers tend to be pretty popular because they're not found in nature often. So this is a really pretty one. As you can imagine from the name, this orchid is from Brazil. So it's from the state of Espirito Santo, where it lives in the forest at an altitude of between 600 and 700 meters above sea level, or in feet, that's about 2,000 feet above sea level. Espirito Santo in Brazil is the state just north of Rio de Janeiro, just east of Minas Gerais, and Minas Gerais has a bunch of gorgeous species and Cattleya orchids. It's just basically lives in an area where there are a ton of awesome species. It's also south of the state of Bahia, where you'll find a lot of Cattleya valkyrianas and such. But this is, because it is in an altitude that's a bit higher, it's classified as more of an intermediate grower. This orchid, for me, does just fine with hot conditions. So this is sort of, it's intermediate, but it tolerates cooler and warmer temperatures. In terms of light, this orchid likes pretty bright light. In the beginning when I got it, this was a gift from my friend Natalie, and it didn't bloom immediately, so what I did was I put it next to my Cattleya orchids. This orchid, I'd say, really enjoys bright light, but moderate light is just fine. So I've initially had it on my Cattleya shelves. The leaves got a little bit too yellow for my liking, so I moved it to more of oncidium type lights. In terms of how this orchid is watered, it generally gets watered as it approaches dryness. So it's kept slightly moist all the time. So I'd say I treat this one very similar to how I treat an oncidium orchid or how I treat any other Maxillaria orchids, where I don't let it get bone dry like a Cattleya. So it's constantly getting some moisture. This one in particular is in a mix of bark, some lava rock, and a bunch of sphagnum in there, and it's also got some perlite. So it's retaining moisture, but also drying out pretty quickly. We don't want the roots to get too waterlogged. In terms of fragrance, I don't detect fragrance on this one, but there are some growers that have detected a fragrance. I haven't had this too long, probably about 6 months at most that I've had this orchid, but I've had a couple of times where it's bloomed, I'll stick my nose in it, and I'm not noticing anything. But there are some Brasilorchis orchids that will have a fragrance to them. In terms of the leaves, they come out when they grow right out of the bulbs, but I've noticed that they do shed their leaves. So you'll see some that are a little bit yellow, more yellow than the rest, and I noticed that when I put it under very bright light. You'll notice that there are a couple of bulbs that have no leaves, so eventually they lose their leaves, and the ones that are yellow are the older ones. The ones that are more green are the newer bulbs. So this orchid just constantly grows bulbs very, very similar to an oncidium type orchid, and then the blooms are typically triggered by a day-night temperature drop differential. So preferably we want to get the temperatures about 10 degrees Fahrenheit less overnight than we do in the day. A little bit challenging for me since I'm indoors, but I keep a window open and it does cool down once we start getting out of the summer months. This is a very pretty compact orchid. It's a beautiful species. It's not too hard to grow. I'd say the main keys for success with this one is making sure that it gets some bright light and that you make sure it doesn't get too dry. Otherwise, you will be rewarded with some beautiful, very dark flowers. I look forward to getting more flushes of blooms in the future, and I highly recommend giving this one a go. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys soon.